I want to give you like a little bit of background. I am a journalist with my education, and I've been doing data journalism, data communications for actually like 6 years right now. And like most of the examples that I'm presenting in this presentation comes from my and my team's experience. But I have also included some of the more recent examples, and you might find some of your works in this presentation. Please do not be mad. I just wanted to make it like more relevant to the audience. Okay, so let's start. Why we are talking about data visualization? Because very, very big majority of information that our brain perceives is visual. It's actually like 90%, and 40% of people respond better to visual information than text. It is very important for us to communicate our messages, especially very complicated information, which is driven by data. And it's very important for us to take this data, convert it into compelling stories, and reach our audience's hearts more easily. And in the end, it helps us to reach our goal and communicate data and our messages coming from data more easily. However, not all of the data visualizations are effective because we sometimes forget to look at the basic principles of how we choose the charts, or what are the labels that we need to put across our data visualizations and things like that. So I want to give you like a little bit of background. What is the process like when we start working on data visualization? First of all, I know that we are all very fond of data, and we are looking forward to take this data and convert it into visualizations. But for some moment, it's very important to step back and take a few moments to think about who is your audience. What do you want to show? What is your main story or message that you are trying to communicate? And how is your audience supposed to use this information? Only after responding to these questions, you can actually get on and start doing your data with piece. Here I have put some GIF of my ordinary day when I'm doing data visualization. First of all, I collect all the data that is relevant on this particular topic. It needs to be organized. If these data sets come from different sources, they need to be cleaned and structured to be compared to each other and to be able to use in a single data visualization. Then we need to analyze the data and define the main message. In this case, as I told you, my background is in journalism, and we were taught at J School that every single story that we as journalists are working should be able to be converted into one sentence rule, meaning that no matter how long our article is, we need to be able to say in one sentence what it is about. So it means that we are capable of defining main message of our story. Once we have this message defined, then it's very easy for us to, it's like relatively easier to go through our data visualization and decide what to include in that, what to exclude, and so on. For example, in this image that I have included in this presentation, we are actually showing around like 5 different cities and 6 different pollutants by 12 months. So in total, we have hundreds of data points, but because we know that our main message is caution air, which means that we want to communicate that the pollution is above the norm. We know like, for example, we do not need to include every single data in these charts. We just want to show how much polluted the air is. So we have drawn the average line, what is the norm, this yellow line. We have shown all the data points that are below this line as green, which is okay. And then the rest is red. This is only a very small part of the very, very long visualization, where once you look at it, you can see that the red color is quite dominant. So it communicates the main message that caution, air is like a very high pollution in the country. After we define the message, then we make the sketch and choose the chart types. When it comes to choosing the chart type, you can use a very simple chart cheat sheet. that is included in this presentation as well, and that you can also Google very easily. And this table gives you a very good opportunity to decide what type of chart you are going to use based on what you want to show. You can choose between comparison, distribution, composition, and relationship. And within each of those categories, then you also have different types of options that you can decide to use in your presentation or your report or in your social media post. We are going to go through each of those types, like most of those chart types, and talk in which case we should use those. For example, when we want to show comparison, it is very good to use the column chart when we have few items. For example, in this chart, we are looking at the average monthly salary of men and women, and our goal, our main message is that that men's average salary, monthly salary, is much bigger than women's, and that both of those monthly average salaries have been increasing, but still the difference between men's and women's salaries stay almost the same. So in this case, the column chart gives us this opportunity to see this difference very easily at one glance and at one look. If we want to show a comparison between many items, we can use bar chart. So this one was column chart, this one is bar chart. In this case, imagine that when you are creating a chart for your A4 publication, for example, you have very limited space for the horizontal chart, but you have bigger space for vertical chart. So it's much better to use a bar chart when you want to include more items. You can also decide whether you are going to use column or bar charts based on how your labels look better in which type of chart. Here, for example, we have two examples when the labels for months are written not very eye-friendly in the first case, and in the case it's much better for us to perceive and read these labels. Sometimes we have the number of items which is even very hard to put in a single bar chart. It can be that we have also like a few categories. Here, for example, we have this example where we are showing the number of soldiers that NATO member countries and non-NATO member countries have sent to different places in the peacekeeping missions. And our main our main aim here was to show that Georgia, which is this one, has the biggest number of soldiers sent to the peacekeeping missions among non-NATO members. So by using this circular bar chart, we managed to put dozens of countries in a single chart. So you can go through it and see what is the country's name, what is the number of soldiers that they have sent, what is the difference compared to the previous year, and they are also color coded. If they are non-NATO members, it's red, and the NATO members are written in blue. Unfortunately, none of the free online tools enable us to create this type of charts, but you can very easily create this chart in Illustrator or any additional software that you are using for your data visualization. The next chart type is circular area chart. This is used for cyclical data. To be honest, this chart is taken from some kind of science publication because I could not find any chart that we have used in our kind of social issues coverage materials. But it is, in my personal opinion, this is not very recommended because it's quite complex. Unless you have a very scientific and very targeted audience who is used to consuming this type of charts, I would not recommend you to put it in your presentations or in your reports. When we want to do comparison over time in one or few categories, and we have very few periods, it's much better to use column chart. For example, we have here six items, 6 years, and only one variable. This is a number of people that have been tested for drug use, and we see the values for each year, and we see the general trend as well, that it has been decreasing over the years. However, sometimes when we want to do comparison over the time, we have many periods and many categories, like in this case. As you see, that there are the line charts which are composed of daily data points. This is the currency exchange rates for different currencies. And line chart is the best chart type in this case, because it creates the very accurate trend line, because we have the data starting from around 10 December to 30th of May. So we have around 200 data points for each of those lines. In this case, line chart is a very good solution. Okay, sometimes we want to show relationship between two variables, to show some kind of correlation between those. But here we need to be very careful, because correlation does not mean causation, meaning that just because one variable is increasing, the second one it's not causing the increase or decrease of the second variable. Here we have the example that our team worked on. The y-axis is showing the piracy percentage, which is what percent of all software used in each country is not legal, and on x-axis we have GDP per capita. So a few years ago, there was a new report released showing that actually Georgia was in one of the leading positions of piracy, and we wanted to see if there was some kind of correlation with GDP. We put these two variables of all those different countries in scatter plot, and as you see in the chart, we see some kind of trend line. So we can see that as the GDP per capita is increasing, the piracy level is also decreasing. Of course, we have some kind of outliers, like here we have Qatar, we have Kuwait, we have some other countries, but it can be explained by, for example, access to oil and gas and this kind of resources, which increases their GDP per capita, but the piracy level is still higher in those countries. Here we need again to remember that correlation does not mean causation. So just because we cannot say that if we increase GDP per capita in one country, automatically piracy level will also decrease. Sometimes we have the challenge of doing to visualize the relationship between three variables or even four. In this case, bubble charts could be useful. If you look at this chart, you can see that we have three variables in this case. So we have years of production when these movies were produced. We have a production budget, how much money was spent for each of those movies to be produced, and the size of each bubble represents the gaining, how much money was made from each of those movies. So when you look at this chart, you can see that the movie with the biggest revenue is this first one, which is Titanic. It was also produced the earliest out of these top 10 films that are shown in this chart, and its production budget was not the biggest either. The biggest one was this light green, which is Pirates of the Caribbean at World's End. Also, if you needed to, so we have three variables in this chart. If you wanted to add the fourth variable, maybe the production studio or something like that, you could use the color, you could color code each of those bubbles, use different colors for different studios, for example, and write the names of the films nearby, so you would not need to actually use the colors to show the names, but you would add additional variable. In this case, my suggestion would be like studio, production studio, or something like that, to put 4 variables. However, this type of chart is also quite complicated because we are showing a lot in a single chart, and it might be complicated for the viewer to differentiate between all these like different information that we are showing to them. But this chart gives us this opportunity. Another kind of complicated chart is a combo chart, combination chart, which is used to be used for the data when we want to show relationship between different categories and when we have many data points. For example, in this chart, we see how many bicycles have been sold in those years and what was the average price. So if you look at the axis on the left, we have number of bicycles sold, and this red line for which we have the scales on the right side is the average price per bicycle. It shows the relationship quite well because we see that as the average price is decreasing, the bicycles sold are increasing. However, it's still like a little bit complicated because we have 2 different categories and 2 different measurement units for those categories here. If you would need, you could also add other additional categories. For example, additional variables. For example, you could add motorcycles next to bicycles, maybe like show it with green column and add yellow line for the average price of motorcycles, but then again, like it would make this chart even more complicated. Column histogram is used to show the distribution of the data. This is also used very often to show the distribution of like population by age groups and so on. But we have not really been using histogram charts in our communication materials when our audience is statistically average people. So unfortunately, I do not have the examples to bring from our own work. And it's very specific as well, because it is used to display information rather than to communicate a single message. In this chart, this histogram illustrates the distribution of book prices, and we see that, for example, like this $46 to $55 price is the most used price for books. Actually, this is the only case when we have used line histogram to show the age of males and females who have received the speeding tickets in Georgia. This chart, actually, when we have been showing the chart to different groups, we have been receiving mixed feedback. This chart is very good to see what is the peak of the age for each gender. For example, for males, it has been 28 years that the most people that receive speeding ticket in males are 28 years old, and for the women it's 37 years old. But overall, it doesn't really show much because, well, we see that as the age is decreasing, the number of tickets we see that also decreasing, but that can be explained by generally the decreasing number of people in that age category that are driving, because this is using absolute values and not proportion from all the drivers. But we just wanted to try something different, and that's why we experimented with this type of chart, and still I do not have the exact answer whether it was a good choice or not. You can maybe give me your opinions regarding the chart after the presentation. Then this is one of the most commonly used chart type, pie chart or donut chart. So the difference between pie chart and donut chart is that the donut chart has this circle here. When we are using pie charts, it is actually it's used to show the composition. So we are showing shares of total, and it is important that the total of pie chart should compose 100%. And the general recommendation when it comes to use of pie chart is that we should not use more than 5 or 6 parts, because when it's too many parts in a single pie chart, it's very difficult for human eye to perceive the difference between those. Also, when we are using pie chart and the percentage breakdown, we should always include the total absolute value of this pie chart. For example, here, like in this pie chart, we show that Orthodox churches have spent 1,770,000 lari, and 60% of this funds, we do not know, it's unknown, the cause of the spending. In this case, if we did not have specified how much money we were talking about, it could be like easily manipulated, because the amount could have been very low, or it could be like even bigger. Anyway, it's like always very important that when you show pie chart with the percentage breakdown, you always indicate what is the absolute value of the total. And here I have an example from one of the CSO organizations, where we see somehow, like, I do not read the Romanian, so I cannot say what it is exactly, but I will give some feedback about the labeling of the pie chart. We see that we have the pie chart here, and then on the right side we have the labels. So we have the colors, we have the percentage indicated, and we have the label for it. However, in this case, for us, it is not very useful to look at this. We need to look at this chart separately and then go and look at the labels to make sense of this chart. Because when we look at this chart, we see that the biggest portion is red, which is followed by orange, but we do not know what are exactly those parts. And it's important to go here and read that it's like corruption probably, and something like that. The better use of the chart would be if we took these words and wrote next to these labels around the pie chart. Also, as you see, we have repeated values. So we have the numeric values written to each of those parts, and then we have the same repeated here. It's good that we make it easy for our viewers to they do not have to come back to the pie chart with 56 and go back to this like red label and see that it's corruption. It's good that like we are putting it next to it. However, it's not usually a good practice when we repeat the values in a single visualization, because imagine that your viewers' attention is limited, and when you give them one visualization, this attention is distributed on all the visual elements in this visualization. So when you show them too many things, the focus is not as strong as it would be in the case of less visual elements. So repeating values is not a good practice, and in this case, it could have been done better. For example, here is the example shown when we have line charts and we have the color codes written below, like apples, bananas, oranges, and in the second case we have the same labels written next to each of those lines, and it makes much easier for us to perceive the information and see the main message right away. And here we go to one example that I found in the annual report of our host organization, actually TechSoup. So as I said in this slide, we are using pie chart to show the share of total. So it's kind of like percentage breakdown. Here we see that the pie chart is used to show costs that incurred in the financial year of 2017. We see the total amount, which is 7 million Polish money, which is a very good practice. However, we do not see the percentages for each of those parts. But visually, we see that like the biggest part is this orange, which is unpaid statutory activity costs. So when we look at this chart, we just see the comparison between them, but we do not see the exact values. For example, if we want to compare light blue to the dark blue part, it is very hard visually to see the difference. We need to go back to this like list and see that the actually dark blue is much bigger, but we need to like look at these numbers, compare them in our brain. Like, so it makes us as the viewers to work, to do some extra work to actually understand what's behind this chart. By adding the percentages and then the titles of each part next to this pie chart, it would be, I think, much easier for the viewer to get the main message. I want you to look at this GIF for a second. And see that in some cases, maybe pie charts are not the best chart types, when actually the very simple column chart can do the job and show us what we want to show. Here we have like 4 different categories, but I guess the main message here is that bacon is #1. So by actually, first of all, making 3D pie charts converted into 2D, and then making the colors disappear and the borders disappear, and taking the values closer to the labels, we convert 3D pie chart into a bar chart, and we get more like much cleaner chart, which is more effective. I will be showing these type of GIFs throughout the presentation with the message that less is more. Whatever you do not need in your data visualization, whether it is a label, grid line, extra color, you should remove it, because less you give to your viewer, more they are gonna see. Okay, this is another example when we want to show the composition between few items. In this chart, we are seeing the distribution of attitudes of Georgians towards doing business with Armenians and Azerbaijanis. And this is happening in Georgia. So this chart has 2 functions. One is to see the composition of the Georgians' attitudes when it comes to doing business with Armenians. And here we see that the positive, the approve attitude is much bigger, which is like green, and then disapprove is much smaller. So we see like very easily the comparison between the blue and red, but also we have the opportunity to see the comparison between Armenians and Azerbaijanis. So Georgians' attitudes between towards doing business with Armenians and towards doing business with Azerbaijanis. In this case, it's almost the same. The stacked 100% column chart is also used when we want to see the composition between the different parts of the whole and to compare them over the time. As in this previous case, in this case as well, we have the comparison between these different parts of a single chart. This is the gas supply from different countries. The orange part is Azerbaijan and the red part is Russia. And the main message of this chart is that over the years, the gas supply coming from Russia has been decreasing, while the gas supply coming from Azerbaijan has been increasing. And when we look at this stacked column chart, we can see for each year, see how the gas supply was distributed by countries, and also we can see the big picture, the trend over the 6 years time period. So in this case, in both of those two cases, we were showing the totals, so not the absolute values, but the proportions of one big whole for each year, because it was more important. We wanted to see how this distribution has been changing over the years. However, sometimes we want to show the total values. In this case, instead of using the percentages, we are just showing and visualizing the absolute values. In this case, we are showing how much of different sweets have been sold in different seasons. In winter, but we're showing the total amount. So in this case, we do not want to, it's not very important for us to see the difference between, for example, like how much chocolate has been sold in winter, spring, summer, or autumn. It's important for us to see in total how much sweets have been sold, and the trend shows that the summer is the best season to for the sweets to be sold. If you decide to use this type of chart, you need to be careful because it's not that easy to, if your main message is that you want to compare for example, like Coke sales to each other by the seasons, this is not the best type. This is used when we want to show the totals of these different sweet types. But overall, it gives us background information, the distribution of different types of sweets per season, but overall we see the general trend of total amount of sweets sold per season. Okay, so this is kind of similar chart, but it is a stacked area chart. Usually we try to avoid using area charts because it's a little bit complicated. It's much easier when there is some space between the columns for the eyes to perceive these as different values, while here we have to look at the whole color and see that, for example, the red color is like dominant. If this is the most important message for us, maybe we could consider using this chart. But if you want to show the changes between the orange parts, for example, like this is world cheese production, and the orange part displays North America. And if we want to see how North America's cheese production has been changing over the years, this is not really the best chart type because we cannot see the difference between 2000 and 2004 because the starting points are different in these cases. And in this case, we have the percentages, and here we have the absolute values. So again, you have to ask yourself, what is more important, to compare the proportions of each year's distribution to each other, or compare the total amount of produced cheese for each year to each other. And after that, you can decide whether you use the 100% stacked area chart or the absolute values one. Then comes the maps. Maps are used to show geographic distribution of a single or maybe even a few variables. In this case, we see the freedom of the net index for 2018, and in this case, the map is the really good visualization because with one look, you can see how different geographic areas are have the same color. For example, in this area, we see that it's not free. In North America, we see that it's free, and South America and some of the countries are partially free. However, sometimes we make mistake that when we hear that we need to visualize data for different countries, by default we go and use maps. And this has actually happened to our team as well. This is one of the examples when we were given the task to visualize the immigration and emigration indicators for Georgia by different countries. The black numbers show the percentage of immigrants coming from different countries, and the red numbers show the percentage of immigrants going to different countries. So when we got this data and it was by countries, we thought that the best way to visualize this data would be to put them on map. And we did this, and you look at this example right now. However, if you look at this chart and I ask you to tell me in a few seconds or even in 1 or 2 minutes what you see here, it would be quite difficult for you to see the main trend, to see the main message of this visualization. Because first of all, you have to look at all these shapes, read the numbers, compare them to each other in your mind, and then sort them in your imagination, and then see which country is top one, like is the top country, how the emigration numbers compare to each other. You also might not even know the names of all these countries, because, well, some of them are quite small, and some of us are not that good in geography. So quite soon, after discussing this chart, we said that it was not very functional. So we did the remake, and this is the final version of this visualization that we got. In this case, we still use the map contours as the background to still give the feeling of the geography and the countries and the travel and so on, the migration of countries. We have also highlighted the countries which are presented in this chart, because not all the countries are shown in this top 10, in the charts of top 10 countries. And then we just use a very simple column chart. When you look at the chart, you can see general trend for immigration, that Russia is #1 country, followed by Greece. You can do the same for immigration, that Russia is also #1 country. However, the difference between Russia and Greece in the case of immigration is not as huge as in the case of immigration. So you get the message much more easily than in this case. So maps are not always the best way to visualize the country data. Also, sometimes when we are visualizing mapping data, we are overusing the colors or borders or different data points. And in this GIF as well, we show how, not we, but the authors of this GIF, which is Dark Horse Analytics, is showing how the less can be more when we reduce the grid lines, these border lines between the states, and use, instead of using different colors, we just use the same color in different tones. And it becomes visually much more compelling. Okay, now we get to the fun part of how not to lie to your viewer. And if you look at this chart and I ask you, please tell me how, so this is the number of tourists from all countries to Georgia from 2010 to 2015. And if I ask you quickly, like, can you tell me how many times this number has increased in 2015 compared to 2010? You might tell me 5 times, because you look at these columns and you see that this is small and this one is quite big, almost like 4 or 5 times big. And you would be right, because this column is almost 5 or 4 times bigger than this one. However, the correct answer is around 3 times, because if you look very carefully, in 2010, the total number of visitors was 2 million, and in 2015, it was around 6 million. So it's 3 times, not 4 or 5 times. But why does it happen so? The reason is that we start not from 0, but from 1 million. And this is the correct chart type when the y-axis starts with 0. And if you look at this chart, you see that the column for 2010 and column for 2015, the difference between them is almost 3 times bigger. Very often, sometimes some organizations or people do this on purpose to manipulate the data visualization and manipulate the viewers. But very often, even the spreadsheet programs do this, like Google Sheets or Excel charts, because whatever the parts of the columns that are the same for each column are taken out from the chart. And we need to be careful not to lie to our viewers. This is another example when I am showing you the chart of total number of visitors from Panama to Georgia in 2010 and 2015, and we are like, wow, this has been increasing. We must have been doing something right about attracting visitors from Panama. However, the second chart makes us doubt our statement, because here we see number of visitors from Panama in each year, and we say that it's kind of it doesn't have the increasing trend, but here it's increasing. So what's happening? The case is that we are using cumulative chart here, meaning that whatever number we had in 2010 and whatever number we have in 2011, we combine them and put in every next for every next value. And technically, even the title of the chart is not a lie, because we say total number of visitors from Panama in 2010 and 2015. So if we look at this number, we say that in 2012, in these years, we had this many visitors that came from Panama. This type of cumulative charts are used very often to manipulate with the sales results and things like that. For example, if I tell you, if I show you the number of visualizations that I have worked on from 2012 to 2018, it would be like really increasing trend, because if I would use, if I wanted actually to wow the viewers, because it would be adding all the previous years data to the next indicator. But we need to be careful not to be like lied to from the visualization authors. The another tip that I can give to you is that we should avoid showing numeric values by shapes. If you look at this first part of this slide, you would think that the last circle is almost 4 times bigger than the first one, because you see that like this is increasing, it's almost double, then it's almost 2 times more than this previous one, and then it's like 4 times more than the first one. However, we see that the second one is almost 4 times big as the first one. The reason for this is that our eyes are not that sharp to see the exact comparison between the shapes, which are not like easy to compare. For example, the columns. Here, if you look at these 2 circles, you might think that the lighter part is 2 times bigger than the darker part. But if we convert the same data into column chart, we see that it's almost 3 times smaller. But we would not be able to say that here, because again, it's very hard for our eyes to perceive the numeric value when it comes to the shapes. Yeah, the same. If we want to visualize, let's say 110 square meters in the case of first house icon, how would we guess what is the size of the second one? Would we take the width? Would we take the height? Or would we just take the proportion of the white part on this visualization. It is very hard for us to calculate. So it's not that it's not recommended to use shapes to show numeric values, especially when it comes to sensitive data. However, you can consider exceptions. I have been using this example to show as not to use shapes for showing numeric values, but the training participants have been pointing out that the message is so strong in this case that maybe it's worth to disregard this rule and actually use the shape of different objects to show the data visualization. The same goes for this one. This is also created by our team. So we want to visualize that 10% of women are smoking and 53% of men are smokers. However, again, this the way we decided how much of this shape we were going to fill by the tobacco leaves was just the intuition. We do not have any accurate mathematic way to fill out this shape. But again, if it's not that sensitive data and it entertains viewers and it catches their attention, maybe you could disregard this rule and still consider using shapes to communicate data. You can also consider, for variety, you can also consider using so-called word clouds to show different values. For example, we have top names for females and males in Georgia visualized in this case, but and in both of those cases, you can see which are the top names. However, if it's very important for you to see, like for example, the difference between this name and that name, it's not that easy to see in this word cloud structure. And in that case, my recommendation would be that you also include absolute values like we have done here. We have added all the names and how many people have been registered under those names for that certain year as the table below. So it's still like kind of like decorative chart which grabs the attention, communicates the main message of top names, and then it gives the additional data below. There is also like this unit chart when we are using not lines or pie charts or column charts to show the values, but we use different types of units. It can be, for example, the icons of men and female, or the seeds, or the dollar signs illustrating some money units, and so on. This type of like unit charts are used to bring more emotion in this process, and it's also like very nice way to use different types of visualizations in your reports or presentations. For example, we have this example from Uganda where you can see that only 2 persons out of 10 are females in senior management in public administration and decision-making spaces. Also, this is another example where we show that only 16% of Georgians exercise regularly, at least 2 hours per week. The other general recommendations would be that we need to filter our data when we start creating data visualizations. The data visualizations are supposed to make it easier for our audience to understand our data, but sometimes we overuse the visual part and we make it even more complicated for them to take the main idea from the visualizations. So whenever it's possible, take out the grid lines, take out the labels, do not use the duplicated values, do not use extra colors, and make visuals less complicated visually, like in this example. Yeah, I have 3 minutes left. Okay. I included another example. Like here, we see that it's like too overcrowded with grid lines and the labels. There are like some other examples. The last thing that I would say is that don't forget about tables. Sometimes when you want your audience to be able to quickly find the value that they might be interested in, or when you have a complex data set and you want to show everything, you cannot decide what to exclude from your data, or if your data set has different types of data showing different measurement items, just use table. It is an old school but quite functional and quite useful data visualization type. For example, like this is the one of the first visualizations that I co-created with our designer, one of our designers 6 years ago, and as you see, it was super hard for me to decide what to include. I thought everything was super important, so I put everything in this single visualization. This is only like tiny part of the infographic. It was like almost 3 times bigger with tons of data points, and like seriously, it could have been much better to be put in a table like this one, because like this doesn't bring any more functionality than the table would be. The last recommendation is really to avoid using 3D charts, because when we look at the 3D charts, we look at the area which does not really correspond to the numeric value of those portions, and it is not that easy for our eye to see the real value, so 3D charts are not recommended to be used. Simplify your charts and visualizations whenever it's possible, and before publishing your data visualization, show them to the people that have not been working on that particular type of chart, because they do not know the topic and they will be critical. They will tell you what works, what doesn't work, and it will enable you to redo and improve your charts before publishing. Okay, I'm gonna skip this part, and I guess if we have time now, we should go and play. Maya, we cannot hear your voice.
Oh, sorry, there's always time for a game. Let's do it.
Okay, so you have to go to kahoot.it.
This is the part where you use your phones.
When having your phones would be useful.
Yeah.
And when you go to kahoot.it, you will have to enter the game pin, which is 761332. Let me. Oops. Wait. 1 6. Okay, we have 2 players. Okay, guys, are you joining? Okay, we have already 3 players. Okay, 4. 5. Okay, should we start, or are we waiting for someone else?
10 more seconds, okay?
Okay, let's wait for a few more seconds.
Anka's here.
6 players.
Higher chance of victory. Okay, because hello. Okay, let's do it.
Okay, let's start. So we have 7 questions. And the first one is, what portion of information perceived by humans is visual, according to the presentation? So the first answer is, the red answer is 50%, blue is 10%, yellow is 90%, and green one is 20%. Okay, so we received 4 responses and 3 of them were correct. It's 90%. Let's go to the next question. When is it not recommended to use tables? Red one, when it's needed to quickly find the specific value. Blue, you have complex data set and you need to show it completely. Orange, data set has data in different measurement items. Green, you want to show the comparison between 2 values. When is it not recommended to use tables? So actually, it is recommended to use tables in all these 3 cases: when it's needed to quickly find the specific value, when we have complex data set and we need to show everything, and when data set has data in different measurement items. So the correct answer was the green one. Okay, so Anka is the leader. But don't give up.
I'm doing it on purpose. I'm doing it on purpose. It's not that I don't know.
Don't give up, because we still have 5 questions, so you have a chance to catch up. When is it recommended to use 3D charts? Red, when you want to show comparison between multiple items. Blue, never. Orange, when all other charts are in 2D and you need something different. Green, when you are showing composition by pie charts. '3D charts are never recommended, especially when you are showing composition by pie charts. You can use pie chart in 2D. It's much better than 3D. So, okay, next question. Okay, Anka is still the leader. What should be the baseline for y-axis in charts? Red answer is 0. The blue one is that it doesn't matter. Orange one is 100. And the green one is whatever is the overlap of all values. What should be the baseline for y-axis in charts? It should be 0. Because otherwise, if we do not start y-axis from 0, it will create misconception visually, and it means that we are lying with our visualization. Okay, next question. Okay, we have the new leader, and it is Sanela.
But I'm catching up. Okay.
You're catching up, yes. Next question. What is the recommended number of parts per pie chart? So how many different parts should be in one pie chart? Red answer is 5 or 6, blue one is 1, orange is 2, 3, and green one is 8, 10. So how many parts should we have in one pie chart? Okay. 2, 3 is okay, but it's not like you cannot really show much with 2, 3. 8, 10 is too much. One pie chart split into 8 or 10 parts, you will not be able to see the differences between them, and it's like too clustered. So the recommended number of parts per pie chart is 5, 6. Let's see who is the leader. Still, we have Sanela as the leader. Maya, you are doing fine. Which chart type is usually used to show the correlation between two variables? Red answer, combo chart, blue histogram, orange scatter chart, and green pie chart. Yay! It's scatter chart, and the majority was right. Okay, Sanela is still the leader. And we have GOG3 as the second one. Okay, the last question. Which of the following statements is correct when it comes to database? The red answer is mixing different chart types is always a good idea. The blue answer is tables should not be used as the means of database. The orange is less is more. Deleting extra elements work. And the green answer is first you choose the chart type and then your message. So which of the following statements is correct when it comes to database? Yay! Yes, less is more. Deleting extra elements is always a good idea. And tables is a bit of old school, but still a very good means of data visualization. So let's see who is the winner. And we have the winner, it's Sanela. Maya, you are on the third place, congrats.
Oh, damn, yes, yes. I was aiming for more, but it's good, it's fine. Okay, Sanela, could you, if you want to collect your prize, could you email me your email if you're interested? It's a really good prize. Because then we'll just...
Sure. Thank you, guys. I really appreciate it. I guess it's $1 million, the prize, so I'll just send you my account number.
Exactly. It's easier. It will be easier. You're right. Yeah,
okay. Thank you, and thank you, Nino, for a great presentation.
Thank you for listening so carefully and attentively.
Yeah, this is my nerd side, so.
Because we are a little bit over time, so we understand if some of you have to go, but this is the question part of the webinar. And actually, Sana asked one during your presentation, Nino, and I don't know if you can see it, but Sana asked, how do you import data into Illustrator, or do you just draw it approximately?
No, we always create charts either in Google Sheets or in Excel, to make sure that it is, because the first stage is to analyze data, so we do that in spreadsheets. Then we export these charts into Illustrator, change the colors or change the shapes. So the baseline is always the Excel or Google Sheet chart.
Right. How?
Well, is the question what is the procedure for that, Anka?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So if you download the new version of Excel and Illustrator, enables you to download the chart in PNG and then import it into Illustrator. If you have any difficulties with that, please anytime email us or write us on Facebook or whatever, and our team of designers will be happy to assist you in this process.
Great. We'll put up the link for Forset on the event, so you can all have access to it.
Great.
Mm-hmm. Any more questions? I actually had one, but that's strictly connected to my one very particular university professor at sociology, who was very passionately against using pie charts. Like, his rule was like basically not to use them at all. But the only kind of exception he allowed was when you have basically at the most 2 variables, meaning like showing 2 items, meaning yes or no questions, or with sociology it was mostly yes or no, or like male, female. But I guess like it depends on your approach, right? Because it's not like a golden rule.
I think it comes to the audience. This was the sociology professor, and he was used to like communicating very specific type of data. And when it comes to like having the like ordinary people as your end users, you need to make it as simple as possible, and pie chart is one of the best charts to communicate your data easily. So again, like as I said, I showed some of the chart types which we have never used in our communication materials, because we usually do this like very common general audience visual materials. But when it comes to scientific research or more like even like business intelligence reports or something like that, these charts would be very useful. But it really depends who is your audience.
I think that's a very good point. Yeah, thinking about because what I got really that resonated with me was your comment about choosing your main message, which is crucial. But then, like, yeah, thinking about who are you doing? Is it exactly? Is it like an academic report, or is it, you know, for your investors, or is it for your Facebook page viewers?
Yeah, so I didn't have time to go through the last part of the presentation, where I have one example when I have included like 3 different chart types for this single data set. If you include this link in the webinar resource on the TechSoup website, then people can, like whoever sees this webinar and the presentation, can always like follow up and ask the question why it was so, and they can even like send me some of their own visualization examples, and we can discuss like
exactly on that
same
point.
Data set, same data set can create different types of charts. It depends like what's the main message that you are trying to communicate. Okay, that's it.
No, but you know, look at exactly on the point of commenting on other people's data. If you open the chat box, you'll see an example from Gotcha. I hope I'm pronouncing that right, with the request for you to comment on.
Okay. Oh, wow. Okay, so this infogram link.
Yeah.
Let me see. Okay. This one, I guess. So this is number of tourists. So is this the origins of tourists? So top 3 countries. Let me see.
Gosh is commenting that it's number of tourists, time period plus map plus averages.
Okay, so the first one is number of tourists.
Number of tourists, yeah.
So it is good that it is like put on the map, but again, when we decide to put some data on the map, we need to ask the question, like, does this map bring extra function to this chart? Because when we saw the example of internet freedom distribution, we saw that, for example, like certain areas, geographic areas, had the same trend, and it did make sense for us to put those like countries on the map. But in this case, because we have only 3 countries, it's like very nice decoration as the map, but it's a decoration. It's not really the chart type, because it's very selective 3 countries, and no matter whether like the Netherlands is here or somewhere else, it doesn't like give us additional, it doesn't give additional context to the information. Also, we are missing the third country, I guess, here. So we have Turkey, we have Netherlands, and Serbia, but it's not written here. I guess it's somehow missed. And the other comment that I have about the chart is that if the main message is that you want to show the differences between those countries, the number of those countries, maybe it would make sense to create the column charts. So you would also be able to see the differences. Like, for example, like whether those two numbers are very close to each other, or there is like big jump from the top one to the second one. That would be my comment about this one. The second one is number of like local visitors, and then
you can see it in the chat. It's time period,
mm-hmm.
map, and average.
Can you read it out? So it's
time period plus map, but I don't really.
Yeah, so I think the second chart, as it's like yearly data, is using line chart very correctly because we have a lot of years, I guess like 50 years, and it gives us the opportunity to see all this like trend in a single chart. It looks really good. I guess these are the main messages that is taken out as the highlight. It is also like it brings our attention to the main numbers. If I understand correctly what it means. And this illustration is very cute, so well done with this chart. And let me see the last one.
So this would be number of overnight stays, not people.
Mm-hmm. So it's like tourists from abroad, this local tourists, and from the Netherlands. The question I have, why have you included only Dutch tourists and not the other top 3 countries like Serbia and Turkey? But well, maybe you just wanted to show the comparison between top country and the rest. Yeah, this is the this like unit chart type when we want to like bring in some emotions and extra feelings. So instead of just like using boring column chart, we are using these items, and I think this is like very very interesting choice of the unit. It's like bed and sleeping tourist with the cat. Yeah, it's nice. It can be just like interpreted differently, this particular icon, but it looks different, so I would say it's good.
Oh, so it's the explanation why it's only Dutch tourists and not Turkish or Serbian is only Dutch tourists receive state subsidies to travel, right? Subsidies to travel.
Okay, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, but overall, the color choice and the general, like the way it is like designed, it's really good. I would just like make sure that Serbia is also included here, and maybe like column charts to okay, now I see what's happening here. I think the shapes are repeated, and then here like this principle of not repeating the same values is also violated, because we have the shape here and then it's taken also out here. The same for Turkey. So I would change that about this particular chart. Also, another comment I will make about the chart is that when we are choosing top 3 countries by absolute value, maybe it also makes sense to calculate the per capita proportion, or like maybe number of visitors per 100,000 like people per country, because like the total number of people living in each of those countries might be different from each other, and that could be the reason why like the Netherlands is number 1. So just like adding this per capita or per unit indicator would give extra context to the chart.
Okay, great, thank you. One last question maybe. Because if there isn't any, then I'd like to thank Nino, of course, so much. Thank you all to all of you other participants. I hope it was useful. Thank you to Anka, who is helping us. And like I said, we'll be posting this recording on TechSoup Europe's website. So follow our Facebook page to get the updates on that and the exact location of the webinar. Thank you all. Have a good night.
Thank you. Bye-bye.